Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm with Michael Crookes. Michael, I'd say, is an FP&A expert, or that's certainly where I've known him. We've worked in a few companies together, and the feedback from the client has always been fantastic. Lots of comments along the lines of knows how to speak finance to finance people, but knows how to speak finance to non-finance people. And I think that's a really important part of FP&A. But FP&A is changing. It's coming from lots of different angles. It's coming from a technology, from a data, from a finance. It's coming from lots of different angles compared to, let's say, 10 years ago. And I thought it'd be a good idea to get Michael on and speak to Michael about FP&A and how that can affect change within the organisation. So, Michael, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm Michael. So I've been working in sort of the FP&A commercial finance space for the best part of 10 years, really doing analytics in businesses, supporting a range of businesses. So I've been quite sector agnostic over the last 10 years. So I've done retail, I've done B2B, done B2C, I've done consultancy, all sorts of different things, but predominantly within SME. So between 50 million and 400 million pound businesses, and really going in there and trying to add value, actually exactly where you've just described, sort of standing in the gap between your more technical accountants or your data analysts and your decision makers who are trying to find the best way forward for the business. So that's kind of the niche that I think I've sat in for most of the last certainly 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, that's the feedback we've had from our clients as well, in terms of you provide that conduit, which I think is a really important part of how the business either goes through transformation or goes through improvements, or in fact, there's one business where they couldn't have any new systems. There was a bit of a stop on spending for a little while. But the CFO wanted to have some clarity on the numbers, reduce the amount of human error that was involved, and also align the reporting to what the investors wanted. And that's where someone like you really comes in, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's exactly that. Quite often you will find, especially in the SME space, that actually there's an appetite for the destination, and actually the question is, how do we go on the journey to get there? What do we need to do to move from where we are now to the nirvana of all systemized, using AI, etc., etc. And actually, I think quite often I've kind of filled that gap. And a lot of the projects I've worked on have been transformation projects where it's not about just plugging a gap for a while. It's about moving to a better solution or a better end location, really.
Yeah, okay. And from the work that I've seen you do, you're reporting into the CFO, but very much a part of the sort of transformation team as we go through and do delivery. But so your background is more analyst background, isn't it? More than what it is, let's say, qualified finance manager.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so I kind of got into finance almost by accident, really. So I started out, as you say, doing commercial analytics, and a big part of that in the roles that I was doing was forecasting, sales forecasting, product forecasting. And maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I got the opportunity to then say, right, let's rebuild this model from the ground up. We had a model in the company that I was working with that just wasn't working, so we rebuilt it from the ground up. And then we said, well, look, obviously this plugs in quite heavily into finance, so let's rebuild the commercial models, but then let's also rebuild the financial models at the same time, in order that we've got one cohesive tool that can get us from somebody saying we need to buy 100,000 of this product to a final position of this is the financials at the end of the year, this is what they will look like, and to do that in an efficient manner. So that was kind of my entry point, if you like, into the more financy roles, and really haven't looked back since then. I think it's one of those areas where I think I excel, as you say, at the numbers side of things, and actually it has put me in good stead in many ways, being coming from that commercial angle, because it means that I can understand maybe a little bit better than some of the more pure accountants what the sales director is trying to achieve, what the product director is trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think sometimes in an FP&A role, or an FPA function, you've got this element of transcending across all the different functional areas. You've got this really sort of holistic view. And one of the big things that we look for when we're looking to support clients with FP&A, I have to be careful how I word this, but support clients with FP&A is we want the person with a strong element of emotional intelligence and really strong communication skills, just as much as we want the financial skills and the analytical skills and the tech skills associated with it. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I think that's entirely accurate. So to me, FP&A sort of sits between the sort of data analytics world, the guys who are, creating your SQL databases, your data warehouses, your technical accountants, and then, as I said before, your decision makers, where it's, your investors or your C-suite or whoever. And the role really is to take if I was to distill what FP&A is down into a single sentence, it'd be giving simple answers to complicated questions. That's the role that FP&A should be fulfilling. Is
Like
your
that.
C-suite come and say, look, what's going on with the business in this area? How are we trending? What are we likely to achieve over the next 12 months? Really complicated questions, but it's your job to go away to dig through all the data and come back and say, right, these are the trends. This is how things look at the moment. If we don't do anything, this is where we will be in 12 months' time. And that really, I think, is the start point of FP&A, is sort of understanding that baseline. Where are we today? What does our business look like today? And what happens if we do nothing?
Oh my God, there's so many clients popping into my head that would go, I will give my right arm for that information. And no, I would give my right arm for the information like that I can trust. Now that for them would be the Holy Grail.
Yes. And again, that is massively, massively important. I've just been working with a client where it was pre-acquisition, and then the company was acquired, and then we went into the company. And, we had a view that said, this is what we think the company looks like. There'd been due diligence done by the PEs who were working on it. And we went into the company, and really the first 3 months were about looking under the hood and saying, were we right about this? Is the company actually what we thought it was? And we found actually certain projects, no, we were making more profit or less profit than we'd understood. And you have to realign your expectations and realign your company vision on that basis. But understanding the moving parts of your business is so important, and it's more difficult than it sounds for a lot of people. Business is not easy.
Well, it can be complicated, and once it gets too complicated, you get this element of maybe we'll just leave that for a little while. But actually, it is more about just getting stuck into it deep, asking the right questions, getting the answers, or getting the right answers to the right questions. Whereas we see a lot of people getting the right answers to the wrong questions. And that can cause a proper spanner in the works, especially if we start going through M&A and those kind of things.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about how you think about FP&A in terms of, I see a lot of CFOs get a little frustrated, and also CEOs get a little frustrated with FP&A that's just following this same process, this same way of working, to me, FP&A feels like it's really fluid, like it's very objective driven. Do you find that's the same thing? And how does that manifest when you're speaking to clients?
Yeah, 100%. I think that FP&A is the most fluid part of your finance team. It always should be. That's the way it is designed to operate. I mean, to me, as I say, the start point is baseline trends, understanding where you're going today. But that's never where FP&A should leave it. You sort of your next step is then, okay, levers. What have we got to change the direction of where we are today? And that can be a massive range of things. That can be everything from introducing new product lines. It could be understanding that our cost base is too big and needing to strip that back. It could be new initiatives to drive sales. All sorts of different angles that you can take. And FP&A really is about assessing all of those different levers, understanding which levers do we actually have that we can pull that will fundamentally change the direction of the business, or fundamentally leave us in 2-3 years' time in a very different place to the place that we are today. And sometimes that will be about assessing those levers and saying, actually, the lever that we thought we had doesn't deliver what we were hoping for. There's a secondary consequence to this. If I put up my prices by 10%, obviously I'm going to see a reduction in my quantity. And, does that offset, or actually is the price the key thing that we need to be driving? So that lever is a useful one to pull. And so it's about understanding these are the genuine levers we have. And these are the levers that might look like, short-term gain, but in the long term, they're actually not going to get us to where we need to get to because they will have secondary, tertiary consequences that we have not yet thought of.
Yeah, okay. So you've not just got the holistic view, but you've also got the ability to look forward by a number of months and years to see if you're pulling the right levers on what impact they're having.
Yeah, exactly that. And to do scenario modelling, one of the key functions of FP&A is to be sitting in meetings with your CFO, with your CEO, and saying, right, okay, what happens if we do this? If we were to pull this lever and to increase your price by 5%, what would that look like? What would our profitability look like? What would gross margin look like? And then what would happen if we had a 3% loss on quantity on that, or a 5%, or a 10%? And doing that in a meeting together, where you can say, right, okay, that's the nuance of what we're doing, and we understand actually these could be the consequences, and actually we're within a comfortable range to do that. Or the same. One of the biggest areas, just because it's one of the easiest short-term gains, is around how do we cut costs? But actually, it's about understanding. Okay, these costs we can cut, and they're genuinely just fat that needs to be trimmed. And these costs, actually, you cut it, but in cutting it, you are going to move work from this team to that team, which will overload that team, and they won't be doing their job as efficiently as they would otherwise. So I think there's an awful lot of that.
I like the fact that FP&A is that kind of functional area that helps the client understand what's possible. And, from an accurate forecasting perspective, what is possible? If I change this, what would that look like? I think a lot of clients, would like that, and would like that capability on hand. Going back to where I've seen FP&A change sort of over the years. Now, a good few years ago, FP&A, whenever we got an FP&A requirement in, often it was job spec driven, and it was written by the job spec was written by the CFO and HR, and it was very much a incremental this, incremental that. What I'm saying is it wasn't sort of objective focused as such. It was more, we need this skill set to do this, this, and this, which I think is almost the total opposite of how FP&A people think. But going further in terms of what they think, so like I've got this sort of vision of a certain type of person sat in FP&A, and they'll go, okay, your cost base is too high. So all of a sudden they're going to the managing director of that particular business unit and literally throwing a bomb right in his office and going, your cost base needs to reduce by 8%.
Yeah.
Now I can only imagine that the managing director immediately is going to be pretty annoyed at that. The CFO is then going to be pushing for that number. The MD is going to be fighting against that number. And now we've got resistance to change. Mm-hmm. So how can FP&A help and enable? I'm guessing that you're not the style that goes in and throws bombs. In fact, I know that's not your style. Yeah. But how do you do it? I mean, in that scenario.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it is about going with some solutions as well as problems, right? So if I am the person who is looking at the data and I recognize a problem, I can see actually our cost base is too big. I'm also probably among the people who can understand actually mechanically what levers can we pull in order to go there. So rather than go to a meeting, well, first of all, there's a sensible hierarchy that you want to go up. I wouldn't drop straight into the investors meeting and mention that we need to cut our cost by 60%. Obviously, there's internal conversations, but going to those conversations with not necessarily the solution, but at least the tools to get to that solution is a big part of it. So I can go into a meeting and say, look, I think the costs are too high on this basis, or this number is too high. There are options here. Either we could remove cost here to offset it, or we could renegotiate this contract, that contract. There are tools that we can use, and actually it's more of a discussion around which of these options is the sensible way forward, as opposed to here's a problem and actually I abdicate my responsibility at that point. The FP&A role should be a problem solving role as opposed to a problem creation role or a problem identification role. We should be part of that solution.
I think in the past it's been a problem identification role, and there's not been too many people that's worked really well with the business operationally to give them solutions, to help them work them solutions through. And I think that is what we're seeing that's changing now. We're seeing less people in FP&A that are true sort of, ex-finance into FP&A, and more people that are coming from different routes, like the analyst route and things like that. And I think it's better for the functional area, if I'm honest. I think it's having a lot more impact.
Yeah, as I say, I mean, I think there's merit to both sides, right? So, as I said before, I think it's between analytics, your data analyst, and your technical accountants, your guys who are making the management accounts, etc. And actually, you need to be able to talk to both of those groups. You need to be able to understand what both of those groups are saying. And so, whether you've started out on the financial route and actually have kind of migrated sort of towards the data, or vice versa, I think the key thing is that you are able to communicate to both sides efficiently. Because if you don't understand the financials, if you don't understand the accountants, then you will be just as ineffective as if you don't understand the data and the detail of the business at the larger business. So
Yeah.
both elements, I think, really are essential.
Yeah, I like how it sits in between those areas in terms of the operational side of the business and the financial part of the business. Now, in terms of reporting, you normally report into the CFO, don't you?
Yeah, I tend to. Yeah, it tends to be reporting into CFOs, but with dotted lines into either CEOs or chief transformation officers, depending on the type of project that I'm brought in for, or the type of contract.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense, because you kind of sat in the middle and you've got to give solution or help create solutions into lots of different areas within the business. But having that one reporting line is the CFO, I think, is still pretty important, given the fact that they're responsible for the numbers and the numbers presentation to the client.
Yeah, exactly. I think usually the way it works is I will be working for the CFO, but I'll typically be working with people who are not within the finance team, at least as much as the people who are in the finance team. So it's almost like a roving finance person who's reporting into the CFO, and that's where my responsibility and priority lies. But actually, I'm doing it outside of the confines of the finance team, or the kind of typical framework of a finance team.
Yeah, okay. And if a CFO wants to bring in someone like you, then traditionally, like I said, they'd throw a job spec, and that job spec would be pretty much what they've had before. But if they're wanting something different, how best are they to engage someone like you? Is it drawing up a list of 4, 5, 6 clear objectives and letting you work that out, or is it just letting you roam in the business for 3 or 4 weeks and then working those out for yourself? How do you prefer to be engaged?
Yeah, I think it's always helpful to start off with a steer. So come in. This is the problem statement that we have. Without prescribing a solution and saying this is the solution we want you to implement. It's saying this is the problem statement that we have. Go and have a look at the business, and then we'll come back together, and the CFO undoubtedly will come with their views on what the solution is, and I'll come with mine, and we'll have a conversation and see how closely we align on that, and actually be able to challenge each other and work together to a solution where we say, actually, this is the right way forward. This is how we need to frame the business in a more kind of sustainable way, or this is how we need to solve this problem that we're facing. So again, the contract that was just in, as I said, we had a clear brief of we need to build out a clear finance function, clear finance team once we go into the company. Once we went in, we had a couple of weeks where we were talking to the finance teams. We were talking to teams in Australia and India, all over the world, where there were offices, understanding the problem statement. And then we came back together and we said, okay, we know some of the problem statements that we started off with, we've got to deal with. But actually, we, in that company, we said, right, we need new ERP that sits across the whole finance team across all the countries. So and there is always going to be elements of that when you come in and you think you've got a problem statement, and actually there's nuance that needs to be understood within that. But I think starting point is, what's the problem statement? What does good look like in 12, 18 months, whatever, 6 months, whatever the contract length is? Where do we want to be at the end of that? And let's work backwards from that point, as opposed to coming in and saying, these are the 6 things that we need fixing,
Yeah. There used to be a term called company doctor. And it wasn't a medical doctor, but the term company doctor was someone that was almost like the CEO's right-hand man or right-hand person. And what they would do is they go and fix things throughout the organization. And they really had like a roaming type remit, but within the constraints of they're working for the CEO. And I can imagine this is evolving more like that type of setup for the CFO. You know, you're the individual that goes, right, okay, well, we think that's the issue. That's the problem statement. Let's go and prove it. And let's look at the nuances around it. Then let's start building some operationally focused solutions. And then we'll start working with the operational team and then start implementing those. You know, and that's very much like the company doctor used to work.
Yeah, and I think the bit that I would add to that is then the other side of FP&A that we haven't really touched on is then the reporting and reviewing, right? So it's not just finding the solution to a problem. It's also then saying, okay, we think we've got this solution. How do we measure it? How do we understand whether we are actually solving the problem or whether we're just being busy fools off doing the thing that we think will fix it, and in 6 months' time we'll still have the same problem? And that is kind of the third element, I think, of FP&A that's really crucial, is that reviewing and that constant realignment or course correction that may be needed, of understanding actually we had this solution and it's working 80%, but actually we need to tweak it, or it's not working at all, we need to rework it entirely. And so that is the other element of kind of post problem solution, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think that it's always been the case with reporting. You know, I sort of ask a bit of a preloaded question to clients sometimes, which is, you know, are you getting accurate in-time reporting? I don't think anyone's ever said yes. You know, I think everyone always wants to tweak, improve, you know, their reporting suite, reporting capability. And of course, you know, the investor, the shareholders, the leadership team, they all want different things at different times. You know, I don't think reporting can be fixed and will be the same for 5 years. It's always going to be evolving. And that's where you come in and help those changes, don't you?
Yeah, and typically, to be honest, as often as not, the biggest question that you need to ask yourself when it comes to the reporting is, what information are we reporting that we don't need to know? Because what you tend to find is you start off and somebody will design a management pack that will go for our monthly board reviews or whatever, and it'll have its 10 pages and it'll be all the core information. And then something will go wrong in the business and somebody will say, right, we need to add a page so that never happens again. And every time something goes wrong or every time there's an issue, a page will get added. And so in the end, you end up with these management documents that are 40 slides long, full of information that actually one time as a freak accident something happened, or as a freak occurrence something happened. It's never going to happen again, but we've got a page on it just to make sure of that.
Yeah.
And the result of that is you can't see the wood for the trees. You can't see what's actually happening in your business because you're so busy talking through all of these niche cases that you've got this slide or this page or this 10 minutes dedicated to in your meeting, that you're not actually looking at the key things. And so I think for me, a big part of the FP&A role is to say, what should we be looking at right now? What are the key moving parts? What are the trends that we need to be focused on? And actually, which are the things that we can keep reviewing in the background? Maybe a more junior level, the finance team is still keeping an eye on that, but actually you don't need to get reported that at CEO and CFO level unless something is, unless there's a flag that needs to be raised on that. And I think, some of that is built out through trust. You need to trust your finance team to raise those flags, and you need the right mechanisms in place for them to do that. But a lot of that as well is about the C-suite team saying, look, we are taking on too much, and actually we need to push some of that back so that we can focus on the really important 3, 4, 5 things that are going to drive the change in this business over the next X years.
That's a really important point. So I think people are doing that personally as well. I'm speaking to more and more people that are saying they're doing less social media, or they're tailoring their social media so they only get certain pockets of news information that they want. So I think over the last sort of 10 years, we've had this sort of, too much information coming at us too often. And I think board packs actually reflect that as well. Whereas now what we are starting to see is that the board packs are being slimmed down. The board meetings aren't particularly taking any less time, but they're building in time to just talk, to just discuss through ideas and things like that. It's a much more productive meeting, is the feedback that I'm hearing from clients. because they're able to use, some of their gut feel, some of their entrepreneurial thinking, and I think that's what board meetings should be about, not just be about ticking boxes and looking backwards.
Yeah, and that too often is the case, is that it's probably 90% of board meetings or 80% of board meetings are about looking back. How have we done? What's the performance looking like to date? And too little of it is actually what are we going to do to correct this error, or what are we going to do to build on our favourable position in the market, or whatever it might be. And it's actually the forward focused bit which, obviously looking backwards is key, again, to understanding the baseline trends, but that's not where you want to be leaving yourselves. You want to have more of your time in the meetings pulling the levers, saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do that thing differently, we're going to push towards change in order to capitalize on this momentum that we've got, or to build some momentum, or whatever it might be.
It's interesting. I can only imagine there'll be certain sort of CEOs, CFOs, functional heads, managing directors that are sort of listening to this and thinking, yeah, we need to make this more simple. We need to make this more straightforward. And at the moment, I don't know who can fix that for us. Is it this department, this department, this department? But actually, I think what you've shown is that FP&A can be this functional area, if you like, that transcends across, and you start looking at what if and what's possible and all those things which, I'm hearing all the time from clients that they want to hear more of. And I think you've demonstrated that really well in this discussion, that this is actually possible, and it's possible with one person. It doesn't need to be 50 people. It can be one person that's brought in specifically to do this. And I think a lot of people are going to be going, maybe we should bring someone in to do something like this for a period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons. It always amazes me how many companies do not have FP&A functions at all. Every finance team has commercial finance. Every finance team has somebody doing the management accounts, etc. Many don't have anyone doing FP&A. It's sort of shared between everyone. And often it's just, we don't have the skill set at the moment, or we don't know, as you said, who is it who we pull into that space. Yeah. So I think the use of interims in that is massive, because it can almost build the framework around which you can then you can grow your business. So
I think that's a really good point, because you can do the heavy lifting, you can build the framework. Because I think at the moment, if I was to look at it as from a CEO perspective, is going, okay, it's a bit of that person, a bit of this person, a bit of this person, and a bit of that person combined.
Yeah.
So apart from saying you do 5 hours a week, you do 4 hours a week, you do 5 hours a week, you do 4 hours a week, and together you could, which that's never going to happen. I think having one person that comes in and just cuts across all of that, builds the framework, and then now we're doing some data input on a monthly basis and then looking at some results, that makes more sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Well, again, thank you for your time, sir. It's been much appreciated. I think you've shed a great light onto what FP&A should look like, and what value it should be adding in the organisation. And I think just by using some of your examples, I think there's a few board members out there at the moment going, why are we navel gazing? Why are we looking backwards? We should be looking forwards more, and we need someone to enable us to do that.
Yeah, no worries. It's been nice to be on the podcast. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you very much. Good to speak to you, Michael. Thanks. Bye.
Sir. Cheers. Bye.